All right, welcome. Appreciate everyone who's made it to join today. Excited for this to be the first Getting Back to Work live YouTube video that we're going to do. The idea here is to do this on a weekly basis at 3 o'clock. Highly appreciate you all making the time to do this. So for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Lee Odess. I'm the CEO of Group 337, also behind Inside Access Control and Inside Visitor Management. I'm really excited that I had the opportunity for Openpath to help support us to do this. So thank you to Openpath. They'll be part of the newsletter. So that's the plan, is we're going to do these YouTube lives, and then they will be posted on YouTube. And then after that, we will then go ahead and put them on a newsletter that will go out. So think of it like an analog version of an e-newsletter. Will come out to you on Fridays as well. So if you want to sign up for those are great. And our plan here is to take a look at 3 to 4 articles every single week that is about access control, but focused on the getting back to work. And the idea behind this was through a collaboration with Openpath of this desire to create content that is something that's actionable, and it relates to the whole idea of getting back to work. There's a ton of information out there. It's kind of hard to really see through all of it. So our hope here was to pick a couple, have a dialogue around it, and then hopefully a conversation online. So by all means, please do. For those of you that have joined, please feel free to use the comment in the live chat. I'm going to do my best to keep tracking that, and I'll answer right back if you have questions or thoughts. It's a live discussion, so please do it. So we'll kick it off. How long this will be, not sure. Going to go through the different articles, and depending on conversation and depending on the what's going on with the content and the online discussion, we'll see how long this takes. But again, the plan is to be here every Thursday at 3 o'clock to do this same type of conversation, different articles. I would also say if you have articles or thoughts around getting back to work, especially that pertains to access control, feel free to add them to the chat, send them to me, and we'll go ahead and add them actually to the information that goes out. So currently right now, also, I'm in Florida at my parents' place, so I've got a mobile setup here, so apologize if there's any noise or anything like that. We're doing our best, but we'll be back hopefully in 2 weeks into the DC area. That all goes well. So all right, so we'll kick it off. The first you'll see is a common theme through the ones that we've picked this week. There's the initial first one that we'll have, which is an article by Carolyn Lewis of Office App, which I read this week, and really it drew me in because it was a conversation about how coronavirus has changed the office as we know it. And I think this is important because I think we need to start to really dig in and get to know what's actually the impacts and really the critical thinking around the impacts that everything that's going on with coronavirus is going to have on the short term and long term. Now, there's some conversations around whether there's actually going to be many impacts as things start to settle down. I come from the point of view that there's going to be a good amount of change, especially long term. I do believe, though, that we're in a bit of yesterday I was on a web series and somebody used the term of a hype cycle. I do believe we're deep into a hype cycle right now on certain technologies, and that things will sort of get back to I'll call it a different level, but not as actually exactly like it was before. There will be some changes, 100% that's going to be in there. So when I read Carolyn's article, which I thought was wonderful, she spoke to this idea that there's periods of uncertainty are often when the best disruption happens. And I agree too. I think if you look at, and there's been plenty of studies that are done, that during times of whether it's an economic depression or a major impact societally, innovations get sparked, and you see new companies pop out, and you also see new ideas and people. So innovation is definitely going to happen. And it's also going to happen within the office space as we see it. And that's the true belief. This narrative around that the office is dead, I personally don't think that that's real. And Carolyn talks about the fact that she also believes that as well. So we share that, and this idea around, but the space will be reinvented and rethought of, which I do agree that there will be a new way that work gets done. So the office, maybe there'll be some slowdown in some areas as people don't go back to the office. Maybe people don't need as much space, but there's always going to be need for areas where, as she says in here, around humans being humans, which are places that we like to meet, we like to create, we like to build, have relationships, and socialize. As much as you've probably seen, we do all these videos and we have Zooms and Google Hangouts and the rest. And I don't know about you, but it's not the same. The sort of human connection that needs to happen. Now, I do like the fact that I don't have to go to an office every single day. So there's some benefits around that. But this idea that you're never going to go to an office, I find it hard to believe. So in reinventing the places, she was saying in this article that offices should introduce more meeting spaces, have facilities that foster creative and a collaborative environment. 100% agree. You're starting to see a little bit about that. There was an article even in the multifamily space about how they're taking away spaces and creating office spaces in there. So the sort of work live, where if you live in a high rise, you have a place to go to do a podcast or meet with somebody, and you don't have to go too far. But that is an office at that point. So the reinvention of the work live is happening in upon us. So great article, highly recommended. We'll put it in the show link so you can get to it. Caroline, I believe she's in the UK and works with a company called Office App, and it was in the Unisu. Great resources as well to get information around prop tech on that end. So they do a wonderful job. So the second article, and here's where a different theme that comes in, and it is around, as these changes are happening, I thought it would be important to talk about some of the emotional sides, if you would, that are driving what's happening in the office space and as we get back to work, and things to be cognizant about and how they are going to end up shaping the way we do work and where we do work. So the second article that I found was how to prepare yourself for a return to the office. So it's by Ron Carucci, and it's a Harvard Business Review. So reputable, good brand. It's pretty awesome. What I liked about this was it talks about this idea and the anxiety that people are having as they go into the office. And the reason why that's important, especially in the access control side, one of the first interactions people are going to have with the buildings that they go into is actually the access control system. They're going to be unlocking it. They're going to be interacting possibly with new apps. There's going to be, you see visitor management systems now. So everybody's pretty much a guest, if you would, that comes there. And the way we interact is very different. And if you think about it, I wrote about this in the newsletter, where our industry has been predicated and built off of access control. And a good friend of mine, John Healy at the Ethics Lab at Georgetown, he talks about how we need to move to access care. And this idea of how we interact with the spaces in our systems it changes. So understanding the human side of this, if we get to, again, take a step back 1 second, most of our systems were the end user was not somebody that we interacted with in a lot of ways. They were the people that had the card and the reader. So we didn't really think about them in the use case. We thought about the integrator, we thought about the administrator. But now having the end user interact, especially as things go more digital, it's important that we start to build our systems with that end user in mind, right? And understanding how they're thinking and how they're feeling is going to be very important to exactly how our systems function. So this article, because it was citing a PwC did a survey of 1,000 people, and 51% of them were citing a fear of getting sick as their major worry. That's pretty scary if you think 51%. I'm one of them on that case of going into spaces. I never really thought about, touching a door handle or doing things like that as a way. Now, I say that, those of you that know me, a little bit OCD when it comes to cleanliness and that. And then back at my days when we used to do this thing around the creepy key, like whenever you go to a Starbucks and they give you that, or any public restroom, they give you that boat anchor to get into a restroom. That always grossed me out. So like that I thought about, but now just the normal traffic of going into places and this idea that you're going to go touch it, there's a fear that's going to get sick. And we talk about the access control industry now being part of the sick building syndrome, which you heard mainly from the air side, but now it's about access control and touching stuff. And if 51% of people are actually really worried about getting sick going back, how do we interact and have conversations with the people. So whether it's the way that we communicate to them to give them a sense of feeling that they're safe, right? So maybe it's in the applications that we have, in the way that maybe some of the visualizations that we do, but thinking about that and thinking through it. The other part of it that I would take to this article as well is in a lot of cases, this is going to come down to what I think is going to be consistency in how we communicate, but then the trust building that people have in the systems that are in the buildings that are there to protect them. So we've been protecting people forever around somebody, you know, coming in with a gun. Now we're getting involved in protecting people around health, and we're part of that story now. So we need to think about consistent communication, because I think people being at a high level of anxiety already going into spaces, if they don't have a consistent experience, like the app doesn't work, or the information they're getting isn't right or consistent, we're going to have some problems, because people are going to not trust the systems that are there, get great anxiety. Maybe they don't come back to the building. They start to work around the system. There's a lot to think about that comes into that. So really understanding people's fears, and the way that they say that we can help in that case is sort of monitoring your own personal anxiety, but then also understanding the anxiety of the people interacting with your space. So maybe that's interacting with the HR department and them doing pulse surveys of understanding how people are doing. Stocking up on patience and flexibility. That's going to be a big one, I believe, because it's going to get awkward when we first get back. If those of you that traveled right after 9/11, when they put all of the new TSA requirements in at airports, I think that's a good way for us to gauge the awkwardness that's going to come from this, right? So if you think about it, you need patience there. There's new processes, there's new systems. You're going to go to lobbies. There's going to be lineup. There's going to be queues. Sometimes the systems don't work. Like, it's going to be a lot of stuff, right? So having some patience and flexibility, managing expectations of how these systems are going to work and your interactions with them, being a source of joy. So finding the people. We had I always like to have somebody on our team that has that personality trait to help people up, but staying focused on the bigger story. And they said here, which I thought was nice, was try this as a question. A year from now, if someone asked how living through COVID-19 changed me for the better, sorry for the next page, how do I answer that? So if you thought about it, and we really start to think about that we're living in unprecedented times in a moment of history, the ability to reflect back and say, how did that time make me feel, and how did I interact with it? So great article. Again, I'll put it in the show notes that we have here. It's a Harvard Business Review. They always do a nice job. But it was How to Prepare Yourself for Return to the Office by Ron Carucci. So I like that. So then the third one that we found was a story around therapists sharing how to manage anxiety over returning to work. So again, theme here is how people feel. And I really wanted to start the first one here about the change in the office, but then also the human side, because I think the end user is going to be very important for the systems and people that are successful in this marketplace, and for the people that are adopting the technologies to keep in mind and maybe start asking questions to your providers around this. So Jennifer Liu of CNBC, the show Make It, they went out and did some research. They did a Pew survey. And in May, they found that 1/3 of the Americans reported experiencing high levels of psychological distress since the start of the pandemic. So if you couple with the 51% of the people that are concerned with health, with the 1/3 of the Americans that are experiencing high levels of psychology distress, that's a lot, right? So again, it's a bit heavy on that side. But if you talk about what they can do to help, so here's some tips that as you think about your systems that you're purchasing or you're selling or you're building, if you think about this is like, how can you help, is like identify your feelings of anxiety, so understanding them. So where are people having those? So understanding, is it consistent messages? Do people need notifications, things like that, right? Avoiding the all or nothing thinking, right? So keeping perspective is going to be heavily important. Managing the anxiety with preparation, so going into it. So if you're on the manufacturing side, maybe it's actually starting some of these conversations. I do think companies that start to message this type of stuff in their marketing will be a clear separation from the adoption side of their systems. Huge opportunity for people to do that. Being intentional on how you get your news and get your information, that's one that's here, I can tell you that. I thought this was nice, was this idea around practicing radical acceptance. So examining what you can and tolerate and how you can feel. So really understanding that, but then radically accepting exactly how it is, even when people might come to you, and the next one being vocalizing what you can tolerate. So if you understand those feelings and you name them, the ability to talk about them, and then taking the symptoms serious. So really looking at this and understanding that we are in the health business now. We were in the safety, we were in the convenience side, and then we got T-boned by health, and now we're in that. So keeping that as on the front end of understanding, I think is going to be extremely important on that end. So there's 3 articles that we believe for this week will help in the getting back to work and the idea around, because the systems that we have, there's a lot of people out in the space that want to help and really want to do this the proper way. Tomorrow, when the article goes out, we'll have another one from Openpath as well. They've done a really nice job with the data that they've collected of giving guidance back and really pulsing their end users in their community to give some guidance and understanding of how the systems are functioning and working and what people are seeing from them, and like how are we going back to work. So we'll add that in. I want to see if there's any questions or thoughts from anybody out in the live chat. If not, what I want to do, so our plan is to be here. Again, idea was to keep it under 20 minutes, so we're doing good on that. Same time, Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific. I've actually gotten a couple of requests from Europe, so we may look at moving the time around on that side to do it. But yeah, please keep the messages coming in. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to a little bit about some news that would help get it back. Hopefully this is like a live newsletter. Appreciate the support. Will, thank you for checking in as well from Nashville, and we'll keep grinding. That's definitely what, for those of you that know me and know people, that is what we're going to do. And Will also put a note in here that it's a good point that he believes that a lot of people are overlooking, that access control is a health service now, 100%. It may become its most common application, I do believe. So Will, on that point, so if you look at it, I think a great example, and we've talked a little bit about this, we all in the access control world, we're talking about frictionless and seamless, right? Now though, with health, it's touchless. And so that's a good example about how the health conversation is influencing by the end user, really the value creation of our systems. And I believe there's more that are going to come out from this. You got to also keep in mind, I think, that some of these cases we got to be careful too, like with the fever detection and that, right? So I'm not going to get in the debate of on the validity of them, but I look at them as a conversation around security theater and security practice, and they're both good and they're both needed. So understanding the difference between those and using things as data points, not sort of as like panaceas of solving or silver bullets. I think you need to be able to do that and keep that in perspective and look at it as a combination of an entire system. Question from Will around what are my thoughts on antimicrobial surfaces? I think they're all important. I think they're called good practices in my case. It's like, again, I think if you look at it from a collective system, I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that. If they help, why not? Do I think they're the answer to everything? Absolutely not. So when I see messages out in the marketplace, we are an industry, and the access control specifically, that is usually sold off of features. So like, I feel like in a lot of ways, we're trying to find that killer feature that in silver bullet, that's going to be the one thing that's going to solve all of these problems. And it's going to take a collective group of them, in my belief. So it's not that one's better than the other. I think we take a look at the use case. And what I want to understand is, if I take antimicrobial services, if I take frictionless, touchless, if I take the thermal cameras, what's the value creation that they all are having? In my case, I think it's a sense of trust and a sense of health. It's also assurance. And I think we need to start talking about that. If you look at why a lot of the buying decisions are going to be made, yes, they want to be helpful, but I also think it's that there's going to be a level of this is to make sure that people don't get sued. So there's a bit of protection in a lot of the cases while we're doing this. So balancing and understanding those things, I think, is going to be important. So on that note, I'll leave it for today. I appreciate the interaction, Will. Thank you. Bert, it's good to see you as well. I appreciate the group of you that were on here to do this. We'll post this tomorrow. and we'll do another one for next week. Thanks again to Openpath for supporting it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.